Welcome to this course. Today, we will begin our journey through the Islamic Golden Age, which took place between the 8th and 13th centuries in what scholars have called a civilization of light. We'll consider how and why it began, its main features, and finally, how it ended. We will study primary sources from the period, including excerpts from the works of Muslim scholars alongside those from European and Chinese writers who were contemporaries of the Golden Age. These sources will enable us to better understand the ideas and accomplishments of one of history's most influential civilizations. Let's start by asking, where did the Islamic Golden Age take place? As we can see on this map, the Islamic world stretched from Spain across North Africa, the Middle East, and Central Asia all the way to India. In fact, the conquests continued even further east, reaching the borders of China. But let's focus for now on the lands in green, which represent the areas with a significant Muslim population. The dotted line represents roughly the extent of the Islamic world at the beginning of the Golden Age. To understand the origins of the Golden Age, we need to go back to the 7th century to learn about two key factors: Islam itself and the role of trade along the major land and sea routes of the Eurasian continent. Islam is not simply a religion, but a civilization with its own legal system. Philosophy, science, ethics, history, art, and literature. It spread rapidly throughout the Arabian Peninsula and beyond, because it offered people a new vision of the world based on universal values and a strong sense of social justice. The Prophet Muhammad, the founder of Islam, emphasized the importance of knowledge and education. In fact, the first thing he did after receiving his prophetic mission was to teach his followers how to read so they could recite the Quran. In a famous hadith, or saying of the Prophet, "The ink of the scholar is more valuable than the blood of the martyr." This statement highlights the crucial role that scholars and intellectuals played in Islamic society, foreshadows the emphasis on learning that characterized the Golden Age. But what were these major Eurasian trade routes, and how did they contribute to the rise of the Islamic world? Well, since the days of the Roman Empire, merchants and missionaries had traveled along the Silk Roads that connected China to the west. And with the emergence of Islam, Muslim merchants established networks along the major sea routes of the Indian Ocean, linking Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. The result was a tremendous exchange of goods and ideas between the major civilizations of the time, including the Chinese, Indian, Persian, and Byzantine empires, as well as various kingdoms in Africa. In particular, Islamic merchants from different Arab tribes played a pivotal role in transmitting goods, especially luxury items, from one region to another. They were also key in disseminating new ideas and technologies. For example, Muslim merchants learned about paper and printing from the Chinese and then introduced this technology to the West. Likewise, they transmitted Indian numerals, including the symbol 40, to the Islamic world and Europe. So far we have seen that Islam and Eurasia trade routes provided the context for the rise of the Islamic Golden Age. Now let's look at the third factor, the establishment of the Abbasid Caliphate. By the middle of the 8th century, the Islamic world was united under a single political authority, the Abbasid Caliphate, which replaced the earlier Umayyad Caliphate. To strengthen the authority of the caliphs and solidify the unity of the Islamic world, Caliph al-Mansur decided to establish a new capital city in the heartland of the empire. In 762 CE, he founded the city of Baghdad, on the banks of the Tigris River in present-day Iraq. Located at the crossroads of major trade routes, Baghdad quickly became a hub of economic activity, a cosmopolitan city with a rich diversity of peoples, cultures, and ideas. In fact, several previous civilizations, including the Mesopotamian empires of the past, had flourished in this very region. And the Abbasids recognized the strategic importance of Baghdad as a center of trade and cultural exchange. The new capital also served as a buffer zone between the Islamic world and the Iranian plateau, thereby protecting the eastern regions of the Caliphate. Under the Abbasids, the caliphs actively promoted an atmosphere of religious tolerance, which attracted scholars from all over the known world. Furthermore, the Abbasid rulers, particularly Harun al-Rashid and his son al-Mu'tasim, were themselves patrons of learning, commissioning the construction of libraries and encouraging the translation of scientific and philosophical texts from other languages. The culmination of these efforts was the creation of the Beit al-Hikmah, or House of Wisdom, which functioned as a sort of academy where scholars from all religions and backgrounds could come together to conduct research, consult with colleagues and translate ancient texts from other civilizations. By providing generous salaries and funding for their projects, the caliphs sought to attract the best minds in the Islamic world and beyond. And speaking of translation, let's look more closely at how the House of Wisdom helped spread knowledge throughout the Islamic world. Scholars associated with the Beit al-Hikmah translated ancient texts from Greek, Persian, Indian, and Syriac into Arabic. They produced fresh translations from the original languages instead of relying on existing translations, ensuring greater accuracy. The most prolific translator was Hunayn ibn Ishaq, who completed over 400 translations himself and commissioned many more. He and his team translated the complete works of Greek philosophers like Aristotle, whose works were almost unknown in the Islamic world before the Golden Age. In fact, Baghdad became the intellectual heart of the world, attracting scholars from all over Eurasia, including Persians, Turks, Jews, and even some Europeans. One of the most renowned scholars at the House of Wisdom was the polymath Al-Kindi, who is considered the father of alchemy and one of the founders of chemistry. His contributions were so significant that later scholars divided the history of chemistry into 3 periods. Pre-Kindi, Muslim scholars were also instrumental in preserving ancient Greek texts, saving them from being lost to the ravages of time. For instance, when the Abbasids conquered Toledo in Spain in 711, they discovered a library containing thousands of Greek manuscripts. Recognizing the value of these texts, they sent them to Baghdad, where Muslim scholars made fresh translations and commentaries. Without the efforts of Muslim scholars, many of these ancient Greek texts would have been lost to history. Another notable accomplishment of the Islamic Golden Age was the development of algebra, which originated in Mesopotamia thousands of years ago. However, it was Al-Khwarizmi, a Muslim mathematician from Central Asia who lived in Baghdad, who codified the rules of algebra in his book, the Compendium Book on Calculation by Completion and Balancing. He also introduced Hindu-Arabic numerals to the Islamic world and helped develop the concept of zero. Al-Khwarizmi's contributions revolutionized mathematics and laid the foundation for modern algebra. Furthermore, Muslims made significant advances in astronomy and cartography, the study of maps. They developed sophisticated instruments to observe the stars, such as the astrolabe and the quadrant, which allowed them to make more accurate measurements of time and location. Muslim astronomers also produced detailed star charts and corrected the inaccurate astronomical data of Ptolemy, a Greek astronomer from Alexandria. In fact, the works of Muslim astronomers were used in Europe until the time of Copernicus, a Polish astronomer who lived in the 5th, 10th, and 16th centuries. The House of Wisdom also fostered innovation in other fields, such as medicine. Muslim physicians made significant contributions to the understanding of anatomy, surgery, pharmacology, and public health. They built hospitals and medical schools and wrote extensively on various medical topics. One of the most important works of medieval medicine was the Canon of Medicine, written by the Persian physician Ibn Sina. This 5-book encyclopedia covered a wide range of medical topics and was used as a standard medical text in both Islamic and European universities for centuries. Finally, Muslim scholars also made significant contributions to philosophy, ethics, and theology. They engaged in debates and discussions with scholars from other religions, such as Christianity, Judaism, and Zoroastrianism, leading to a flourishing of intellectual activity. One of the most influential Muslim philosophers was Al-Farabi, who is considered the second teacher after Aristotle. Al-Farabi's works on metaphysics, ethics, and politics influenced later Muslim thinkers, as well as the development of natural philosophy in the West. In conclusion, the Islamic Golden Age represented a remarkable period in history when Muslim scholars made groundbreaking discoveries and contributions in various fields, including science, mathematics, medicine, philosophy, and literature. This era of cultural brilliance transformed the intellectual landscape of the world and left an enduring legacy that continues to inspire awe and wonder today. Now, I would like to turn the floor over to you. What aspects of the Islamic Golden Age do you find most interesting? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe so you never miss out on future content. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the Islamic Golden Age. Until next time, may the light of knowledge guide your path and illuminate your understanding of this magnificent civilization. In our first episode, we talked about how Greek philosophical ideas had been passed down to the Islamic world through the work of the Syrian philosopher but it was in the early 9th century that this exchange really began to take off. Happened in a place called the House of Wisdom. Now, when I say the House of Wisdom, I'm talking about a real house, a physical place in Baghdad, the capital of the Abbasid Caliphate, which was basically all of the stuff between here and here at that time. So if you can imagine where Baghdad is the modern-day country of Iraq, tucked away in that region of the Middle East that so many people seem to be fighting over these days. Well, there was a house there, a literal house that became known as the House of Wisdom, also called Dar al-Hikmah or Dar al-Kitab, meaning House of Books. The story goes that Harun al-Rashid, one of the caliphs of the Abbasid, decided to build this house after he found out about the existence of the legendary Library of Babylon, an ancient library built by Nebuchadnezzar II, king of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, way back in the 6th century BC. Apparently, Harun was pretty bummed out that the great library, Babylon, was underground anymore and thought that maybe he could make something similar. A place where the best minds of his vast empire could meet and share ideas and translate important books from other languages into Arabic and preserve them for posterity. And so he set about building a library, sort of like the Library of Alexandria, where scholars could study in peace and quiet and away from prying eyes. The thing was, though, this place soon became much more than just a library. You see, Harun al-Rashid commissioned a group of translators to start translating scientific and philosophical texts from Greek into Arabic, but they needed somewhere to live and work. And so he let them move into this house of his, along with the books they were working on. So the place took on another name, Dar al-Tarjama, the House of Translation. Eventually, it even added another function. It became a kind of university where students would come to learn from the masters. And then the caliphs, after Harun, followed his lead and built similar houses of wisdom all over their empire, from Samarkand to Damascus but the one in Baghdad was the mother of them all. And it functioned as the nexus point for all of these other houses of wisdom. So what exactly went on in this house? How did the translation movement begin and develop? What were the results? And why should you care? Let's dive right in. So, as I said, the House of Wisdom was founded in Baghdad in the early 9th century during the Abbasid Caliphate under Harun al-Rashid. In fact, the whole reason this place existed was because the caliphate had expanded so much so quickly that they now ruled over lots of different peoples who spoke lots of different languages, including Greek, Persian, Hebrew, and Latin. And so they wanted to make sure that all of these different peoples felt equally included in their empire. The caliphs also recognized that since they ruled over such a vast area, they couldn't possibly know everything about everything that was going on. They needed help to govern, and so they started commissioning scholars to write reports and books and studies on various topics, so they could better understand lands and peoples under their rule. Some folks were sent to distant lands to observe foreign cultures and then report back to the caliphs. Others were asked to write books on local history or culture or religion, and still others were brought to the House of Wisdom to translate all of these newly written books and older books they found in their territories into Arabic, so the caliphs could read them. And this last group grew to include not only scholars from the lands they ruled over, like Greeks, Persians, Jews and Christians, but also Muslims from all over the Islamic world. And one of the most prolific of these translators was a Christian Arab named Hunayn ibn Ishaq, who ended up translating hundreds of scientific and philosophical texts from Greek to Arabic. He started working for Harun al-Rashid and continued on under Harun's successors, Al-Mamun ibn Harun and Al-Wasim ibn al-Mamun. The guy was so good at what he did that both Harun and Al-Mamun eventually appointed him as the head of the translation movement. In addition to translating books himself, Hunayn trained dozens of other translators and set up systems for quality control to make sure that the translations were accurate. He also realized that the Arabic language didn't have words for some of the concepts found in Greek philosophy and science, so he invented new words based on existing Arabic roots to fill those gaps. In fact, Hunayn ibn Ishaq developed much of the medical terminology used in Arabic until this day. A lot of it is derived from Greek, like the word for fever, which comes from the Greek word pyrexia. But Hunayn created new terms for things like the human heart, which in Greek was called cardia, but in Arabic became kaku, which is still the word used in Arabic today for heart. The word for liver, which in Greek was hypa, became fungs in Arabic, and the word for kidney, which in Greek was nephros, became falsifa, which evolved into the Arabic word for kidney, but also became the basis for the word philosopher. He and his crew weren't just translating scientific and philosophical books either. They tackled all sorts of subjects: astronomy, physics, mathematics, geography, history, poetry, and music. And in doing this, they weren't just copying what the Greeks wrote verbatim. Sure, they wanted to preserve the original meanings of the texts, but they also engaged with the material, discussing and debating its merits, and sometimes even correcting what they viewed as mistakes or oversights. They were also quite creative with their translations, often making improvements on the originals. For instance, Ptolemy's a monumental work of astronomy containing many mathematical calculations had a few flaws. It contained several inaccurate mathematical calculations, as well as some faulty astronomical observations. So when Hanan's brother, Ishaq ibn Hunayn, translated it into Arabic, he corrected all the errors he could find and filled in some of the gaps using other mathematical sources. Another example is the anatomical text by the Greek physician Galen. When Hunayn translated it, he noticed that Galen made some mistakes while describing the human body, probably because Galen worked with animals and sometimes incorrectly applied what he learned from dissecting animals to humans. So Hunayn corrected Galen's mistakes using his own anatomical knowledge and experience, and this brings us to the main reason why the translation movement at the House of Wisdom was such a big deal. It was the first time someone took the massive body of work done by Greek philosophers and scientists and made it available to a whole new audience. At the time, Greek wasn't a common language among scholars outside of Greece and the Eastern Mediterranean. So most of the people who wanted to read this stuff, people in Persia and India and North Africa, didn't actually know Greek. And even if they did, these texts were mostly written in classical Greek, the ancient form of the language, which was hard to understand, even for most native speakers of Greek. It was also the case that during the early Islamic period, many Muslims felt uncomfortable with studying non-Muslim texts. After all, the Quran clearly stated that Islam was the one true path and that everything else was basically wrong. So a lot of early Muslims didn't want to waste their time reading about pagan Greek philosophy or polytheistic Indian mythology. But things changed once Islam started to spread beyond the Arabian Peninsula, and Muslims encountered people with different religious beliefs than theirs. They started to realize that maybe there was something to this whole philosophy thing. Maybe it wasn't all just pagan nonsense. By the 9th century, Muslims were looking for guidance on how to live and interact with other people. They were governing large swaths of land and managing diverse populations, and they realized they needed some new tools for this task. Enter Greek philosophy, and this explains why the translation movement started at the House of Wisdom under Harun al-Rashid. They were looking for ways to better govern their people, and they found those answers in the Greek philosophical and scientific texts that had been written centuries earlier. Harun al-Rashid was especially fond of Greek scientific and philosophical works, as well as Indian and Persian literature, and he was eager to translate as much of it as possible into Arabic, so his people could benefit from it. Unfortunately for him, he died in 809 CE, and his son Al-Memon came to power. And Al-Memon was even more enthusiastic about Greek philosophy and science. He wanted everyone in his empire to study it, and so he founded the Mu'tazilan movement, a philosophical school within Islam that emphasized rational thought and philosophical inquiry. The Mu'tazilaman looked to Greek philosophy and science as a model for how to think about the world and solve problems. They were huge fans of Aristotle and his emphasis on logic and observation and reason, and they eagerly studied the works of Greek astronomers, mathematicians, doctors, poets and historians. Now, this wasn't exactly how most Muslims saw their relationship with Greece, and it caused quite the controversy. Many conservative Muslims criticized the Mu'tazilaman for abandoning traditional Islamic teachings and embracing pagan Greek philosophy. But Al-Memon was undeterred, and he continued to promote the translation movement until his death in 833 CE. But then his brother, Al-Wasim, came to power, and he put a stop to the whole thing. The House of Wisdom was shut down, the translators were exiled, and the translation movement effectively ended after only about half a century. The House of Wisdom was supposed to be a place where people could study and translate books without fear of persecution. But ultimately, it was the politics of the time that determined what got preserved and what got lost. But thankfully, what was preserved was enough. The works of Aristotle, Galen, Euclid, and many others survived thanks to the efforts of Hunayn, Ibn Ishaq, and the other Muslim scholars of the House of Wisdom. They became the foundation of what European scholars built on during the Renaissance. Much of what we know about Greek philosophy and science today is thanks to these Muslim scholars. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more videos like it, please subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. Chapter 3. A Golden Age of Math. The Greeks had laid a solid foundation for mathematics, but now in the Islamic world, a new era of discovery was about to begin. As trade expanded along the Silk Roads, ideas and knowledge spread even faster, and thanks to the efforts of a few remarkable men, several branches of mathematics would be transformed forever. This is the story of how Muslim scientists built upon Greek discoveries and changed the world through math. Al-Khwarizmi, born in 780 AD near the Central Asian city of Fargana, which is present-day Uzbekistan, studied at the House of Wisdom in Baghdad. It was here that he learned the Hindu Arabic numerals and developed an interest in geometry and algebra. At the time, most of the world did not use the numbers we use today. They used Roman numerals, which were cumbersome. For example, writing the number 4 in Roman numerals meant writing for separate letters, and the number 1000 was written as M. But the numerals created in India consisted of symbols that could be combined and modified to represent any whole number, such as 753, which could be written as 700 plus 50 plus 3 or 753. These symbols were efficient, easy to learn, and could be adapted to express fractions. They allowed for easier calculations and quicker, more accurate problem solving, which was ideal for tracking large sums of money during trade. This set the stage for Al-Khwarizmi's groundbreaking work. His first major contribution was his introduction of systematic methods for solving quadratic equations. But before we can understand what that means, we have to look at how people thought about equations before him. To describe a mathematical relationship between two quantities, say x and y, ancient mathematicians would often write a proportion. In other words, they would state that the ratio of one quantity to the other was equivalent to another ratio. So instead of saying x equals y times 2, they would say x is to y as 2 is to some other quantity, like 4. Solving for x, therefore, meant finding what number, when multiplied by y, would give you 2y. For example, if y equaled 6, then 2y would equal 12. So if we took our original proportion and filled in the blanks, it would look something like this. X over y is 2 over 4. We know that y equals 6, so we substitute that value in. That gives us x over 6 is equal to 2 over 4. Now we have to find what number x represents. The only way they knew to solve for x was to guess and check. If you guessed 3, then 3 6 would equal 18, which is not equal to 2 4 or 8. If you guessed 4, then for 6 would equal 24, which is not equal to 8. But if you kept guessing, eventually you might get to 9, because 9 6 does equal 54, which is equal to 2 4. Al-Khwarizmi realized there had to be a better way, a logical method for reaching the answer. His breakthrough was describing a process where, instead of guessing and checking, we could use logic and previously known theorems to arrive at the solution directly. He published his findings in a book called The Compendium Book of Calculation by Completion and Balancing, written in 813. In it, Al-Khwarizmi showed how to solve linear and quadratic equations by systematically manipulating the equation until the unknown variable was isolated on one side of the equation. This approach not only provided solutions to quadratic equations, but it also established a systematic problem-solving technique applicable to various mathematical scenarios. Through this work, algebra emerged as a distinct branch of mathematics. Algebra in Arabic means the restoration of broken parts, which alludes to Al-Khwarizmi's practice of balancing equations by adding or subtracting values to both sides to achieve equality. His innovative methods revolutionized mathematics. But that wasn't all he gave the world. In another famous work, The Image of the Earth, Al-Khwarizmi discussed the length of a degree of latitude and calculated the area of a triangle based on its sides, which came to be known as Hierony's formula. He also wrote a corrected version of Ptolemy's table of chords and produced tables of signs that were much more accurate. And the word algorithm is derived from the Latin translation of which is actually the plural of algoritmo, meaning the demonstrative method or rule, referring to Al-Khwarizmi's systematic approach to solving problems. His influence on the development of mathematics is immeasurable. Next, we meet Omar Khayyam, who is perhaps best known for his poetry, particularly his Rubaiyat four-line verses that explore themes of love, life, death, and the search for wisdom. Born in 1048 in the Central Asian city of Nestle, Omar Khayyam had a deep interest in multiple fields, including philosophy, astronomy, and poetry. But he is also celebrated for his significant contributions to mathematics. Despite living in an age when many believed the classical Greek texts had nothing left to offer, Omar Khayyam proved them wrong. Instead of relying on new ideas, he went back to Euclid's work and demonstrated how Euclid's parallel postulate could be formally derived from other axioms. This may seem unremarkable today, but at the time it was a brilliant realization. Because Euclid's fifth postulate was famous for being so difficult to prove, and though Omar Khayyam was not the first to attempt a proof, he was the first to show that it was formally derivable from first principles. This suggested that there might be other classical results that could be proven in similar ways, sparking further investigation into the foundations of geometry. He also made significant advancements in solving cubic equations, which are polynomial equations of the third degree, having the general form x cubed plus bx squared plus cx plus d equals 0. While the quadratic formula had been known for centuries, the solution to cubic equations remained elusive. However, Omar Khayyam managed to solve certain types of cubic equations geometrically, which led to a better understanding of their solutions. This was a huge step forward, because up until this point, the only known solutions to cubic equations relied on finding the roots of a complex geometric figure. So Omar Khayyam's geometric proof was a real breakthrough. Another important contribution Omar Khayyam made to mathematics was his work on calendars. He was instrumental in the adoption of the Jalali calendar by the Persian Empire. This calendar reform addressed some of the shortcomings of the traditional Islamic calendar, which was based on lunar cycles, leading to a year that was 11 days shorter than the solar year. By contrast, the Jalali calendar aligned more closely with the solar year, making it more suitable for agricultural purposes. After Omar Khayyam, we meet Al-Kindi, a polymath from the Islamic Golden Age who made significant contributions to multiple fields of knowledge, including medicine, philosophy, and mathematics. Born in 700 AD in Kufa, Iraq, Al-Kindi pursued a wide range of scholarly interests, demonstrating a remarkable ability to grasp complex concepts. He explored diverse topics, ranging from logic and metaphysics to astronomy and musical harmony. However, it is his work in mathematics that has resonated throughout history. One of Al-Kindi's notable works is on the balance of Hesiod, which delves into the concept of numerical balance. In this treatise, he examines the properties of numbers that maintain their divisibility when their digits are reversed. For instance, the number 12,345 is divisible by 6, and reversing the digits still yields a divisible number. Al-Kindi explored such patterns, laying the groundwork for number theory, a field that deals with the properties and relationships of Another significant contribution of Al-Kindi lies in his work on arithmetic and algebra. In his book, An Introduction to Arithmetic, he discusses various arithmetic operations, including addition, multiplication, and division. Moreover, he delves into number systems, demonstrating a deep understanding of place values and the use of algorithms for calculation. Al-Kindi's work was instrumental in preserving and advancing mathematical knowledge during a period when scientific progress was flourishing in the Islamic world. His ideas laid the groundwork for later mathematicians to build upon, contributing to the overall advancement of mathematics during the Islamic Golden Age. Finally, we meet Al-Tusi, a prominent mathematician, astronomer and philosopher during the Islamic Golden Age. Born in 1201 in Maraga, Iran, Al-Tusi's contributions to science and mathematics were substantial. He is best known for his work on trigonometry and number theory. His major work, the Compendium of the Toledo, presented a comprehensive collection of mathematical principles, including those related to numbers, proportions, equations, and geometric figures. The compendium served as an influential textbook for centuries, shaping mathematical education in both the Islamic world and Europe. Furthermore, Al-Tusi significantly advanced the study of the sine function, establishing its properties and developing tables of sines, which are essential for various calculations in astronomy, navigation, and engineering. His work on number theory explored the properties and relationships of numbers, laying the foundation for further investigations in this area. Additionally, Al-Tusi made contributions to the development of observational astronomy. He designed and built instruments to measure astronomical phenomena and compiled astronomical tables that were used for calendar calculations and navigation. So, from the practical applications of algebra in everyday situations, to the elegance of geometric proofs and the intricacies of number theory, these Muslim scientists touched upon various aspects of mathematics that shaped our understanding of the world. Their works not only advanced the frontiers of mathematical knowledge, but also served as building blocks for future discoveries, ensuring that the legacy of the Islamic Golden Age continues to inspire and educate generations of mathematicians to come. In our last episode, we discussed how Muslim scholars had preserved Greek scientific thought and added to it during the Islamic Golden Age. And now in this episode, we'll see how their astronomy or study of the stars blossomed into an impressive scientific enterprise driven by religious needs, like knowing when to pray and facing the right direction towards Mecca, for instance. So come with me on this journey back in time as we explore how the stars aligned for Muslim astronomers. Before we begin, I just want to say thank you very much for your support. Some of you have been sending me such nice messages about how much you enjoy these videos. It really means a lot to receive such positive feedback from you guys. So, keep it coming. I love reading them. The first thing to point out is that while astronomy was studied in the West during the Islamic Golden Age, its center of gravity shifted to the East. The main reason for this is that the Eastern caliphates were more powerful and wealthier than the Western ones. For example, Baghdad under the Abbasids was one of the largest cities in the world at the time and a hub for trade and intellectual exchange. Now the need to determine the times of prayer and the direction of the Qibla, which are both obligatory duties in Islam, motivated Muslims to measure the position of Mecca in the sky. By the 2nd century, Muslim astronomers knew that the sun and the moon were not stationary. They would rise and set in different places and at different times. This knowledge enabled them to calculate the Qibla by measuring the positions of certain stars at specific times of the year. One example of such a star is the North Star or Polaris. But instead of calling it the North Star, they called it the Ben Asterisk, meaning the Lord's bench. And this is because they saw it as Allah's throne. Al-Zarqali, who was an astronomer, geographer, and astrologer at the court of Harun al-Rashid, famous for his 1001 Nights stories, wrote a book called Kitab al-Ha, or the Book of Heavenly Motions, and the indication to the Creator through the revelation in the art of astronomy. In this book, he explains how to use the pole star for navigation. He also describes how to use the shadow of an object at noon to determine the direction of Mecca. Al-Zarqali provided the first clear proof that the Earth was round based on observations of lunar eclipses and stellar. His work laid the foundation for later Muslim astronomers and was influential in the works of al-Battani and al-Biruni. Speaking of al-Battani, He is considered the greatest Muslim astronomer and one of the greatest astronomers in history. His improvements of measurements of the length of the year, the solar day, the circumference of the Earth, the obliquity of the ecliptic, the moon's semi-diameter and parallax led to more accurate predictions of solar and lunar eclipses. In his book, El-Qunat el-Mutazar fi Hisab al-Sinat el-Manazir, or the Compendium of Astronomy, which was translated into Latin in the 12th century and used by European astronomers until the 17th century, he included a table of signs that was more accurate than that of Ptolemy and the Greeks. Al-Battani also calculated the equation of time and its corrections, which was unknown to the Greeks. His method was based on observation rather than geometry, which made it more accurate. He also corrected Ptolemy's theory of the solar diameter by showing that the apparent diameter of the Sun is equal to that of the Moon. He determined the length of the solar year with 365 days and 8 hours, which is only 2 minutes longer than the modern value. Al-Battani's influence on European astronomy cannot be overstated. His work inspired and aided Copernicus in formulating his heliocentric theory, and Tycho Brahe used his tables in his astronomical work. Even Copernicus dedicated his book, The Revolutions of the Heavenly Spheres, to the memory of Al-Battani. Another great Muslim astronomer whose work was also highly influential in Europe was He was an Andalusian astronomer who lived in Toledo, Spain. During the 11th century, he worked at the court of Alfonso VI and was influenced by both Muslim and Christian astronomers. Al-Zarqali's most important work was his astronomical tables, Kitab al-Mukhtasar fi Hisab, al-Sanad al-Manazir, or the Compendium of Astronomy, which were based on the observations of Al-Battani. These tables gave the positions of the planets and other celestial bodies for every hour of every day for 18 years. They were used by European astronomers for centuries, especially those who supported the Ptolemaic system. Zacharias Ursus, a German astronomer who was born in 1593, even used them to predict a total solar eclipse in 1607. Al-Zarqali also wrote another book called Al-Dal, Al-Makhtasa fi Hisab, Al-Sanad or a Compendium of Astronomy, which was a commentary on He corrected some of Ptolemy's errors and added some of his own observations. But if the work of Al-Battani and Al-Zarqali were the peak of astronomy during the Islamic Golden Age, then the work of Nasir al-Din al-Dusi would be its crown jewel. Nasir al-Din al-Dusi was a philosopher, astronomer, and mathematician who lived in the 13th century. He was born in 1201 in the city of Tos in Iran and died in 1274 in the city where he founded an observatory. Al-Dusi was a polymath who wrote on various topics, but his main contribution was to astronomy. He is known for his commentary on Ptolemy's Almagest, which he wrote in 1242, and for his astronomical tables, which he published in 1270. He also wrote several other books on astronomy, such as Kitab al-Risalatain, in which he described a new theory of planetary motion. So what was so special about his work? What made him stand out from other Muslim astronomers? Well, it was his model of the solar system, which prefigured Copernicus's heliocentric theory by almost 2 centuries. You see, Al-Dusi proposed that the Earth rotates on its axis and that the planets rotate around the Sun in circular orbits. This was very similar to Copernicus's heliocentric model, except that Al-Dusi did not abandon Ptolemy's geocentric system. He tried to reconcile his own observations with Ptolemy's theories by introducing epicycles and other geometrical devices. He also believed that the moon was sometimes illuminated from the side by reflected light from Venus. While Al-Dusi's work was not widely accepted during his lifetime, it had a profound impact on later astronomers. For example, his commentary on Ptolemy helped to preserve Greek astronomy and make it accessible to Europeans. His astronomical tables were used by Copernicus and other heliocentric astronomers, and his model of the solar system inspired them to challenge the prevailing geocentric view. Al-Zarqali was indeed a pioneer of modern astronomy. He bridged the gap between ancient Greek astronomy and modern Western astronomy. He also paved the way for Islamic astronomy to flourish. After Al-Zarqali, there were many other Muslim astronomers who made significant contributions to the field, such as Al-Urdi, Al-Kashfi, Al-Khwarizmi, Al-Sigi, and others. They built observatories and produced works that were used in Europe for centuries. Two of the most important observatories were the Observatory founded by Al-Tusi in 1259 and the Samarkand Observatory founded by Allah Beg in 1420. These observatories were not just places for making observations, but also centers of research and education. They attracted scholars from all over the Islamic world and beyond. To sum up, the Islamic Golden Age witnessed a remarkable development of astronomy driven by religious needs and facilitated by the preservation and transmission of Greek scientific thought. Muslim astronomers made significant improvements in measuring celestial bodies, predicting eclipses, mapping the heavens, and developing models of the solar system. They also built observatories and trained generations of scholars who would continue this tradition elsewhere. The impact of Islamic astronomy on European science cannot be overstated. Muslim astronomers preserved Greek scientific thought and added to it. They also helped to revive interest in astronomy during the Renaissance and inspired some of the greatest astronomers in history. Their legacy lives on in the stars. Alright guys, this is it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed this brief journey through the history of Islamic astronomy and the lives of three great Muslim astronomers who illuminated the path for future generations. If you did, please don't forget to hit that like button, leave a comment, and share this video with your friends. And if you haven't already subscribed, please do so and join our growing community. The Abbasid period marks a turning point in Islamic history. The Muslim world is now at the height of its power, with territories stretching from Spain to India. It's a vast empire with immense wealth. So where does that leave science? Let's find out. This is part 4 of our series on the history of science. And today we'll be covering Chapter 5, Medicine and Healing. Make sure to watch the other videos in this series after this one. Islamic medicine was centuries ahead of its time. Drawing on Greek and Indian sources, physicians developed systematic medical practices, hospitals, and surgical tools. Let's take a look at some of the incredible discoveries made during this period. We'll start with smallpox and measles. Both are horrible diseases caused by viruses. They cause fever, rash, respiratory issues, and death. But did you know there was an old saying in Persia that went, "Measles come by 7, stay for 7 and leave by 7. Well, it turns out they were right. What they didn't know was that there were 3 stages to the disease. The first stage lasts 7 days with fever, the second stage lasts 7 days with rash, and the third stage also lasts 7 days with recovery. Smallpox and measles weren't the only diseases studied by Islamic scientists. Al-Razi, also known as Raises to Western audiences, wrote extensively about both diseases. He was born in 865 AD in Ray, a city near modern-day Tehran. His most famous work is a 5-book encyclopedia called Al-Havay, which includes a section on smallpox and measles. In it, he describes symptoms and suggests treatments such as opium or thorny plants to induce sweating. He also noted the contagious nature of these illnesses and recommended isolation and quarantine to stop their spread. That's why whenever you hear someone say, "Stay in bed and get lots of rest," you should thank Al-Razi. Al-Razi wasn't the only physician working hard to understand disease. Enter Ibn Sina. better known by his Latin name Avis. He was born in 980 AD in Bukhara, a city in what is now Uzbekistan. By age 18, he had memorized the entire Quran and mastered Islamic theology, law, philosophy, and mathematics. He then turned his attention to medicine, studying under various teachers and traveling throughout the Muslim world to gain experience. Though he held religious beliefs dear, he took an evidence-based approach to medicine, rather than relying on superstition. Over the next 30 years, he read widely on the subject and collected the works of over 500 Greek and Persian physicians. Before writing his masterpiece, The Canon of Medicine, published in 1025, it was based on his own research as well as the ideas of predecessors. At first, it was meant to be a summary of existing knowledge, but grew into a 5-book encyclopedia. Its detailed and systematic approach to medicine made it the most authoritative medical text in the West for over 600 years. It wasn't until the 17th century that it was finally surpassed. Ibn Sina described thousands of illnesses and treatments, and made significant contributions to many fields of medicine, including surgery, pediatrics, psychiatry, ophthalmology, physiology, pharmacology, and ethics. Today, his work continues to influence doctors around the world. For example, the Hippocratic Oath taken by Western physicians contains elements from the oath sworn by Islamic physicians. We can't talk about Islamic medicine without discussing hospitals. Not only were they numerous and widespread, but they also included the first mental health treatment center in the world. Hospitals in the Islamic world were open to all people regardless of gender, ethnicity, religion, or social status. They provided free treatment and food to patients, and often included pharmacies and medical schools. The word hospital itself comes from the Arabic word bimaristan. Bimaristans were built starting in the 8th century and continued to be constructed through the 18th century. Early ones were attached to mosques, madrasas or caravanserais, but later became independent institutions. The first purpose-built hospital dates back to the Abbasid period and was established in Baghdad in 805 by Harun al-Rashid, the Caliph, best known for being the inspiration behind the character of Shahrazada in the Arabian Nights. The hospital featured several departments for various illnesses, including infectious diseases, eye disorders, dermatological conditions, injuries, and chronic conditions. It even offered mental health services. It also included a pharmacy, an administrative area, a library, and separate facilities for men and women. It could accommodate up to 800 patients, making it one of the largest hospitals in the world at the time. Islamic physicians were pioneers in the field of surgery. They performed complex operations, such as removing cataracts and hernias, setting broken bones, and treating wounds. They also developed new surgical instruments, including scalpels, forceps, and sutures. These innovations allowed them to perform more precise and effective surgeries with less pain and suffering for patients. One notable surgeon was Al-Zarqali, also known as Al-Bukisis in the West. He was a Spanish Muslim physician who lived from 936 to 1013. He is considered one of the greatest surgeons of all time due to his pioneering work in the field. His most famous work is the Kitab al-Tasrif, which is a 5-book encyclopedia on surgery. It includes detailed descriptions and illustrations of over 100 surgical instruments and techniques, including the first accurate description of cataract extraction. Al-Zarqali was also the first surgeon to use a rubber tube to clear a blocked artery, a procedure still used today. He trained many disciples who spread his surgical techniques throughout the Muslim world and to Europe. Today, we can still marvel at the exquisite craftsmanship of the surgical instruments he helped design. The beauty of these instruments is a testament to the skill and precision of the Islamic artisans who created them. To ensure accuracy and clarity, Islamic physicians used the camera obscura to project an image onto a screen for easier viewing. They also developed new methods for treating diseases. For example, they used herbal remedies and developed new drugs such as opium and hashish to treat pain. They also emphasized the importance of prevention and public health measures, such as clean water and air circulation, to prevent the spread of disease. The impact of Islamic medicine on the world is immeasurable. Islamic physicians made groundbreaking discoveries and innovations that saved countless lives and advanced the field of medicine. Many of their discoveries were lost to history until recently, when scholars have begun to rediscover and appreciate their contributions. As we continue to learn more about the rich history of Islamic medicine, we can be inspired by the brilliance and compassion of the physicians who dedicated their lives to healing the sick and advancing our understanding of the human body. One figure who embodies the spirit of Islamic medicine is Amina bint Tader, a female physician who lived in the 12th century. Despite the challenges she faced as a woman in a male-dominated field, she became one of the most respected doctors of her time. Her story highlights the intellectual achievements of Muslim women during the Islamic Golden Age. Unfortunately, there's not much known about her life, but her contributions to medicine are well documented. She was the daughter of a king and received a royal education, which likely included traditional Islamic subjects as well as medicine. She became known for her expertise in treating women's health issues and eventually became the personal physician to the queen. Her reputation for healing and teaching led to her being invited to teach at prestigious universities, where she trained generations of physicians. Despite her busy schedule, she found time to write books on medicine, including a popular work on women's health. Her books were widely read and praised, and she was even invited to treat the Sultan's wife. Despite facing societal norms that limited women's roles, Amina bint Tader broke barriers and achieved great success. She left a lasting legacy as a healer and teacher, paving the way for future generations of Muslim women in STEM. As we bring this episode to a close, let us remember the invaluable contributions of Islamic medicine to our world. The groundbreaking discoveries and innovations of Islamic physicians not only saved countless lives, but also advanced our understanding of the human body and the treatment of diseases. Their commitment to healing and their dedication to the pursuit of knowledge continue to inspire us today. Let us strive to carry on their legacy by embracing reason, seeking knowledge and working towards a better, healthier world for all. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of science. Together, we can continue to explore the fascinating world of science and uncover the stories that have shaped our modern world. Okay, back to our series on medieval history. So excited to be sharing this one with you all because I'm obsessed with this topic. I have talked about it before in my social media accounts, but here we are diving deep into the golden age of Islamic medicine. Join me, won't you? I don't know about you, but I think it is pretty remarkable how much history there is that people forget or just never learn. Like this chapter in particular has been so fun for me to research, because I remember learning about the Silk Roads and things like paper, gunpowder, and printing coming from east to west. But nobody ever taught me about how advanced Islamic medicine was, how it helped shape the modern world, and how many lives it saved. It's really crazy. So let's get started. Chapter 5 of the medieval world. As political and economic power shifted to the Muslim world in the 8th century, Muslims became patrons of science and scholarship. They built libraries, translated ancient texts, and made original discoveries in astronomy, mathematics, and above all, medicine. Building on Greek and Indian sources, physicians in Muslim lands developed systematic medical practices, hospitals, and surgical tools. Their work preserved and transmitted to the West the valuable heritage of classical Greek thought, and that is an understatement. Islamic medicine saved countless lives and pushed the boundaries of knowledge further than anyone had imagined. The House of Wisdom in Baghdad was a center of translation activity, housing works by Greek and Persian scholars, and although we usually talk about these magnificent libraries in terms of philosophy, they also amassed and kept safe a lot of scientific and medical texts as well. So while Muslim scholars were making their own discoveries in medicine, they were also building on the work of others. For instance, they translated the works of the Greek physician Hippocrates and the Indian physician and astronomer Sushrat Muni. If you want to learn more about Sushrat Muni and his surgical advancements, I will link his video down below. But now, back to the show. In addition to the practical applications of knowledge, Muslims also made significant contributions to the theoretical foundations of medicine. Al-Razi, or Rhazes in Latin, was a Persian physician born in Ray in 865. He lived during the Abbasid period in Greater Syria and Central Asia. He died in 925. His most notable work is his book on the smallpox and measles, which contained descriptions of both diseases and suggested different treatments. So he was the first known author to differentiate between these two diseases, which was huge. Not only that, but he said that smallpox was contagious, but measles were not. He advised quarantine for the sick and recommended treating symptoms such as fever or pain with milk. This sounds basic today, but trust me when I say that the idea of contagiousness was uneven considered before this point. People did not know how diseases spread, and they often blamed moral failings or bad air for illnesses. And sometimes people thought that certain diseases could actually do you good. So putting a stop to that and advancing the field of public health was no small feat. Also wrote a general medical encyclopedia and a book on poisons. He was also an advocate of observation and reason as the basis for understanding disease. And he stressed the importance of a systematic approach to diagnosis and treatment. And that's not all. Another big deal was his promotion of public health measures like quarantine and isolation of the sick. He was also a pioneer in the use of clinical trials, which is crazy to think about. But yeah, what he's doing here is basically inventing the scientific method for medicine. Then there's Ibn Sina or Avicenna to the Western world. So in 980 in Bokhara, present-day Uzbekistan, one of the greatest minds of the Islamic Golden Age was born. By the age of 17, he had memorized the entire Quran. Then he turned his genius to secular studies and ended up writing over 450 books on theology, jurisprudence, philosophy, poetry, astronomy, and medicine. Wow! His most famous work is the massive 5-book encyclopedia of medicine known as the Canon of Medicine, which was completed in 1025. This work became the standard medical text in both Islamic and European universities for over 600 years, only surpassed by the invention of printing. How insane is that? The Canon of Medicine consolidated and systematized existing medical knowledge and was based on the works of Greek, Persian, and Indian physicians. However, Ibn Sina added his own observations and theories, bringing the whole thing together in a fresh, new way. He emphasized the importance of studying the body's natural processes and functions, and advocated for a holistic approach to treatment, considering diet and lifestyle factors as well. He also made important contributions to the understanding of diseases such as diabetes and epilepsy, proposing new treatments and diagnostic methods. Additionally, he wrote a book on pharmacology and helped develop new drugs such as opium and brandy. Now, if that wasn't enough, he also wrote the Book of Healing, which dealt with the relationship between faith and reason and discussed topics such as metaphysics, psychology, and ethics. In it, he argued that the universe was rational and orderly, and that humans had the capacity to understand its laws through reason and observation. That sounds very familiar to me. Anyways, he was also a polymath who mastered many subjects and made significant contributions in various fields, such as philosophy, astronomy, physics, logic, mathematics, geology, and ethics. Let us take a moment to appreciate the incredible minds at work here. And the fact that we still use their discoveries and texts today is really a testament to the power of their work. Okay, let's move on to some other cool stuff. Throughout the Islamic world, hospitals called by Maristans were established to care for the sick and wounded. These institutions played a crucial role in the development of modern hospitals and healthcare systems. The first known purpose-built hospital was built in the 8th century in Damascus by the Caliph Al-Mansur, and we actually talked about this guy in the last episode. The establishment of this hospital marked the beginning of a new era in healthcare, setting an example that was later emulated throughout the Muslim world and beyond. The term hospital actually comes from the Latin word for hospitality, which was very important to those running these establishments. So if you're wondering where the word comes from, there you go. These hospitals were not just places for the sick, but also served as educational centers for physicians and medical students. The curriculum often included lectures, dissections, and clinical training, and provided a structured pathway to becoming a qualified medical practitioner. How awesome is that? Islamic physicians adhered to strict ethical guidelines and emphasized the importance of honesty, confidentiality, and respect for patients. They believed that medicine was a noble profession and took an oath similar to the Hippocratic Oath, which we still use today. Some even pioneered innovations like the use of clinical trials to test the effectiveness of new drugs and treatments. We already mentioned that, but wow, this is just so far ahead of its time. The Muslim world also made significant advances in surgery, developing new techniques and instruments for various procedures. They performed complex operations such as cataract removal and even plastic surgery, showcasing their skill and precision. I mean, look at this image of an early cataract extraction kit. Can you imagine? The treatment of mental health was also given attention with the establishment of mental health treatment centers. These centers provided a range of therapies, including rest, relaxation techniques, music therapy, and hydrotherapy, recognizing the importance of addressing mental well-being. These treatment centers were groundbreaking for their time. They demonstrated a compassionate and holistic approach to healthcare, emphasizing the interconnectedness of the mind, body, and spirit. Today, we recognize the significance of integrating mental health treatment into overall healthcare systems. And these early efforts laid the foundation for modern mental health institutions. So, this is a big deal. Alright, so before we wrap this up, I just want to say that there is so much more to cover on this topic. There are amazing discoveries, stories, and contributions that I just didn't have time to include in this episode. But trust me, the more research I dove into, the more I found myself asking, why haven't I heard about this before? It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Anyways, thank you so much for joining me on this journey through the golden age of Islamic medicine. If you liked this video, please consider subscribing and leaving a comment with your thoughts or any suggestions you might have. Your support means everything to me, and I can't wait to bring you more fascinating stories from history's hidden corners. Thank you. Alchemy, astrology, and mysticism in the Islamic world. Scholars of Islam made significant contributions to the fields of chemistry and alchemy. They not only preserved Greek knowledge, but also conducted their own experiments, laying the groundwork for modern chemistry. So in this video we will be looking at chapter 6 from the textbook. Let's begin with an amazing quote from the great philosopher and polymath, the great Aristotle. He said, "There is nothing which is a science that does not presuppose some previous knowledge." And he is absolutely right, because when we learn something, We always build on what we already know. We never learn something totally new in a vacuum. So let's see what was the state of knowledge when the Muslim scholars started to study alchemy. The word alchemy comes from the Arabic alchemia, meaning the science of chemistry. It is often described as a philosophical and mystical tradition that was concerned with the transformation of base metals into gold. But actually, alchemy had a much broader scope. It encompassed medicine, astronomy, astrology, physics, and even philosophy. The ancient Egyptians were among the first to practice alchemy, and they believed that the pharaohs were divine and that they had special powers to transmute metals. Alchemy then moved to Greece and Egypt, where it was studied by Zosimus of Panopolis, one of the early Greek alchemists. He emphasized the importance of experimentation and observation, and he also introduced the concept of fixing mercury. Later, alchemy reached Mesopotamia and Persia, where it was studied by Jabir ibn Hayyan, also known as Jabir ibn Hayyan, is considered the father of chemistry, and he is credited with introducing experimental methods into alchemy. He also developed several important concepts such as distillation, crystallization, and the production of acids. Jabir ibn Hayyan's work was highly influential, and his ideas were spread throughout the Islamic world and into Europe, where they helped to lay the foundations of modern chemistry. In this picture we have a distillation apparatus attributed to Jabir. It consists of a round flask with a long neck and a receiver connected to the neck by a tube. This device was used to separate mixtures by heating them to their boiling point and then collecting the vapor that is produced. This process can be used to purify substances or to separate them into their different components. This is a very interesting device, and it shows how far the Islamic scholars were advanced in their knowledge of chemistry. But how did the early Islamic chemists view the nature of matter? Well, they believed that all matter was composed of elements, and that these elements could be combined in different proportions to form different compounds. They also believed that it was possible to transmute one element into another. And this was the ultimate goal of alchemy. The early Islamic chemists used a variety of methods to investigate the properties of matter, including heating, cooling, distillation, and sometimes even explosions. They also kept detailed records of their experiments, and this helped to ensure that their work was built upon by future generations. And now let us look at some of the important contributions of the Islamic scholars to the field of alchemy. First, we have Jabir ibn Hayyan. Like I said before, he is considered the father of chemistry, and he made significant contributions to the development of alchemy. His work helped to establish alchemy as a true experimental science, and he is also credited with the discovery of several important chemical substances and processes. Another important contributor was Al-Kindi. He was a philosopher and polymath who wrote about a wide range of topics, including alchemy. Al-Kindi believed that the universe was composed of 4 elements: earth, air, fire, and water, and that these elements could be combined in different proportions to form different compounds. He also believed that it was possible to transmute one element into another, and he described a number of processes that could be used to do this. Then we have the mysterious Al-Zarqali, also known as the Caliph's son. Not much is known about his life, but he is credited with making important contributions to the field of alchemy. He wrote a book on the subject, and in it he described a number of important chemical processes, including the preparation of acids and the extraction of metals from their ores. These are just a few of the many important contributions that the Islamic scholars made to the field of alchemy. Their work helped to lay foundation for modern chemistry, and their ideas and discoveries were eventually transmitted to the West, where they had a profound impact on the development of Western science. The early Islamic chemists were not only interested in the theoretical aspects of alchemy, but also in its practical applications. They developed new methods for extracting metals from their ores, for purifying substances, and for creating new compounds. Some of these methods are still used today, so there you have it. A brief overview of alchemy in the Islamic world. The Islamic Golden Age was a period of cultural, economic and scientific flourishing in Muslim history lasting from the 8th to the 14th century. It began after the Muslim conquest of Persia and the subsequent unification of the Muslim world under the Umayyad. During this period, Islam spread rapidly across the world, and Muslim scholars built on the knowledge of Greek, Persian and Indian thinkers to make significant contributions to science, mathematics, medicine and philosophy. In today's episode, we will talk about one of the most important aspects of the Islamic Golden Age, namely its engineering and inventions. So make sure to watch till the end to find out more. And don't forget to subscribe for future updates. When we think of the Islamic Golden Age, images of magnificent mosques, bustling marketplaces, and influential scholars come to mind. But have you ever wondered about the ingenious inventions that shaped this era? From automated machines to programmable robots, the innovations of Islamic engineers and scientists were centuries ahead of their time. Today, we're going to take a journey through time and explore some of the most incredible engineering and inventions of the Islamic Golden Age. The Book of Knowledge of Ingenious Mechanical Devices is an illustrated manuscript written by the polymath engineer Al-Zarqali in the 12th century. It contains over 500 pages detailing the construction and operation of 50 different devices. These devices include water clocks, automatic machines, programmable robots, and other mechanical devices powered by water and weight. This book is considered to be one of the most important texts on the history of technology and engineering. Al-Zarqali was a brilliant engineer and inventor who lived in the city of Jazeera, located in what is now Iraq. His book, The Book of Knowledge of Ingenious Mechanical Devices, is a compilation of his own inventions as well as those of his predecessors. The book is divided into 3 sections. The first section deals with water clocks and other timekeeping devices. In the second section, Al-Jazeera describes various automatic machines such as a self-writing fountain, a player, piano, and an automated musical instrument. The third and final section of the book is devoted to programmable robots. One of the most famous of these robots is the Mechanical Man, a programmable automaton that could walk, bow and wave its arms. Al-Zarqali also invented a robot servant that could perform tasks such as fetching water and carrying objects. Other notable inventions described in the book include a crane, a wheel, a copying machine, a programmable calculator, and a set of dice. But that's not all. The Book of Knowledge of Ingenious Mechanical Devices also contains detailed illustrations of each invention, making it a valuable resource for engineers and inventors today. Unfortunately, very little is known about Al-Jazeera's life, but his legacy lives on through his inventions and his book, which continues to inspire engineers and scientists around the world. In addition to Al-Jazeera's contributions, Islamic engineers made significant advancements in other areas of engineering as well. For example, they developed sophisticated irrigation systems to water crops in the desert, built large-scale public works, projects like mosques and designed innovative wind-powered machines such as windmills. These advancements had a profound impact on the development of the human civilization and helped to lay the foundation of modern engineering. Today, the engineering and inventions of the Islamic Golden Age are often overlooked or underappreciated. However, they played a vital role in shaping the course of history and deserve to be remembered and celebrated. From the great mathematician Al-Khwarizmi to the inventor Al-Zarqali, Muslim scientists and engineers made countless contributions to the advancement of human knowledge and the betterment of society as a whole. As we continue to innovate and push the boundaries of what is possible, let us be inspired by the legacy of the Islamic Golden Age and the enduring impact it has had on our world. What did you think of this episode? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Well, hey there, and welcome back to my channel. In this video, we're going to look at Chapter 8 of your required reading for this course, which covers the philosophy and rationalism of classical Islam. So if you've got your copy of the textbook, Why Philosophy? By Peter Kropotkin ready, let's go to Chapter 8. Okay, so Chapter 8 opens with a discussion of how Islamic philosophy was heavily influenced by Greek thought. And that should not surprise you, since Muslim scholars had access to Greek philosophical texts through their study of which they developed what is called or theological reasoning, attempting to prove the truth of Islam rationally. Now, you might recall from our discussion of the Jewish philosopher Philo in the last video that the early Greek philosophers like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle were heavily criticized by some conservative religious figures of their day, undermining the authority of Moses and the Torah with their emphasis on reason, and here we see a similar dynamic emerging in the Islamic world. But before we get into that, let's take a look at some of these great Muslim philosophers and their ideas. We will focus on 4 thinkers in this video. Al-Kindi, also known as Ibn Rushd. All 4 of these philosophers grappled with the relationship between reason and revelation, and all 4 were highly influenced by Aristotle. In fact, Avros was known as the interpreter of Aristotle in the West. The first of these 4 philosophers was Al-Kindi, 801 to 873 CE. Like many of the Greek philosophers, Sina was a polymath, writing on a variety of subjects, including metaphysics, epistemology, ethics, aesthetics, and more. He argued that the universe was eternal and unchanging, and that its parts are in a state of constant flux. In his view, nothing comes into being and nothing goes out of being. Instead, things are simply transformed from one another. He also held that the human soul is immortal, and that the goal of life is to acquire wisdom. Al-Farabi, who lived from about 872 to 950 CE, is considered to be the foremost of the Islamic philosophers. He wrote on a wide variety of topics, including politics, where he argued for a kind of Aristotelian ideal of a mixed constitution, combining elements of monarchy, aristocracy, and democracy. But he also wrote on the nature of being, on beauty, and on prophecy. For Al-Farabi, the highest good for humans is happiness, which he defined as the actualization of the rational part of the soul. In his view, the role of the philosopher is to turn people away from their base desires and toward the good life. The next 2 philosophers, Ibn Sina and Avros, both lived in the Iberian Peninsula, with Ibn Sina living from 980 to 1037 and Avros living from 1126 to 1198. They were both born in what is today Spain, and both wrote commentaries on Aristotle's works. In addition, both were at times critical of overly rationalistic approaches to theology. While both of these thinkers were influenced by Aristotle, they each had their own unique approach. Ibn Sina, for example, wrote a very influential work on logic that was used throughout the medieval period. He also wrote a very popular philosophical and medical encyclopedia. And Avros is best known for his commentary on the Koran, as well as his defense of Aristotle against what he saw as the excesses of religious fundamentalism. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, some Muslim thinkers like Al-Ghazali criticized these rationalist philosophers as undermining the authority of scripture and tradition with reason. Some conservative Muslims rejected the very idea of proving God's existence through rational argumentation, insisting that such proof is unnecessary since God's existence is Moreover, they argued that philosophical proofs of the existence of God are actually harmful to the spread of Islam, since the rational proofs of the Greek philosophers have been disproven, and therefore it is better to abandon philosophy altogether. This tension between those who emphasized religious authority and those who emphasized reason would continue into later periods and is reflected in the different approaches to scripture and tradition among Sunni and Shia Muslims. Nonetheless, the rationalist philosophers of classical Islam laid the groundwork for secular philosophy in Europe, particularly during the scholastic period when Muslim, Jewish and Christian philosophers alike built on the insights of ancient Greek thought. Okay, that's what you need to know to get an A in this course. But if you want to get an A in life, well then, you gonna have to stick with me for the rest of this video where I am gonna help you get an A in life by helping you get an A in this course. So to get an A in this course, and ultimately in life, you need to learn how to think critically, to analyze arguments, construct your own arguments, to write clearly and persuasively, and to speak intelligently about complex topics. So if you want to develop those skills and get an A in this course, then I've got 3 action steps for you. First, please download the podcast. It's available for free on various platforms. The podcast is a super fast and easy way to review course material and to prepare for exams. Second, join us online for our Socrates seminar. You can find the link to that in the description for this video. The seminar is designed to help you improve your critical thinking skills and to learn how to write and speak about philosophy. And third, sign up for our email newsletter. Again, you can find the link to that in the description for this video. We send out a weekly email with philosophical insights, writing tips and updates about our courses. Okay, that's all I've got for you in this video. Thanks for watching. I hope that you learned something, and I'll see you next time. What was life like for Muslims around the world in 1250? To answer this question, we'll examine changes in the political, social, economic, and cultural aspects of Muslim life during this period. Remember, though, that these were not the only years when Muslims flourished, nor were all Muslims living in the same place at the same time, part of the same civilization. This will become even clearer as we continue the journey through time. But for now, let's get started. As we begin our journey into the particularities of 1250, it's essential to remember that there is no singular Muslim civilization. The term Islam refers to a diverse array of cultures and ethnicities spread across 3 continents. What might a Muslim living in 1250 be reading? Due to its focus on oral traditions, early Islam had few written texts. However, by 1250, Arabic literature reached new heights with poets like Al-Mutanabi and Rumi, who was also a Persian, expressing themes of love, loss, and divine connection. The 1001 Nights, a collection of Middle Eastern and South Asian folk tales, compiled over many centuries, continued to be one of the most influential literary works in the history of world literature, while stories like those of Aladdin and Sinbad, the sailor, would later be adapted for children. The original tales often contained mature themes and complex narratives. Other popular genres included mystical poetry, which explored the idea of a divine love, and historical chronicles, which recorded the deeds of famous warriors and leaders. In addition to these literary achievements, the art of calligraphy reached new heights. The written word in Arabic was highly revered, and calligraphers were highly skilled artists. They would often incorporate geometric designs and patterns into their work, which became central to Islamic visual culture. In fact, because Islamic art avoided depicting humans, especially prophets, in a religious context, artists innovated in the depiction of highly stylized abstract forms, such as those found in manuscripts, mosques, and on various objects. For instance, Persian miniatures from this period often featured elegant floral or geometric patterns that defined the borders of the illustrations and provided a rich, intricate background to the human figures or narrative scenes depicted within them. Speaking of manuscripts, the art of illumination, or the decoration of pages with gold leaf and other embellishments, flourished. This was particularly true of the Quran, which was copied and recopied by scribes. These scribes would often make small improvements to the text, known as the tajweed, or the proper pronunciation of words, or add decorative flourishes to make the text more legible and aesthetically pleasing. Moreover, geometry and algebra. Muslim scholars made significant contributions to the field of mathematics, including the development of algorithms and the introduction of Hindu-Arabic numerals. These innovations had a profound impact on the development of science and mathematics in both the East and the West. Beyond the written word, what else might a Muslim have experienced in 1250? Well, if they lived in a city, they might have been part of a bustling merchant community. Cities in Muslim-majority regions were often centers of trade and commerce, and merchants played a vital role in the economy. Many cities had specialized markets where goods from all over the known world could be found, and merchants would travel far and wide to buy and sell their wares. Some merchants even established trading networks that stretched from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific, facilitating the exchange of goods and ideas across vast distances. And thanks to the introduction of accounting rules, bookkeeping practices, and banking institutions, long-distance trade became safer and more efficient. In fact, Muslim merchants kept meticulous records of their transactions and used sophisticated accounting methods to manage their finances. They also developed innovative banking practices, such as the use of letters of credit, which allowed merchants to secure payment for their goods without having to carry large amounts of cash. These financial tools facilitated the growth of international trade and helped to connect distant regions in new ways. Furthermore, some merchants belonged to professional guilds, associations of merchants or artisans that regulated the production and sale of goods in a particular industry. Guild members set prices, controlled quality standards, and protected the interests of their profession. These organizations provided a sense of community and solidarity among merchants, and helped to ensure fair and ethical business practices. In addition, some merchants built impressive mosques, such as the Great Mosque of Konya in Anatolia, which became centers of religious and cultural life in Muslim communities. These architectural marvels showcased the wealth and power of the merchant class and served as a testament to the beauty and grandeur of Islamic art and culture. To be a merchant in a Muslim society in 1250 was a challenging but potentially very rewarding profession. It required a great deal of skill, knowledge, and experience to succeed in the competitive world of international trade. However, the rewards could be great, not only in terms of wealth and power, but also in terms of cultural exchange and the opportunity to travel to far-off lands. Well, that's all the time we have for today's journey into the past. Let us know in the comments below what you thought life was like for Muslims in 1250. Chapter 10. Geography and exploration. With an empire stretching from Spain to India, it's no surprise that Islamic scholars had a keen interest in geography. In fact, with all that exploring going on, someone had to map the known world, and the most famous of these maps is this one, the Tabula Georgiana, or Table of the Earth. It was created in 1154 for King Roger II of Sicily by the Arab geographer Ali. And wow! Check out how much of the world is in here. Here's Europe, Africa, and Asia, and look how detailed it is. There are cities, mountains, and rivers, and it's all based on real scientific observation. But how did he do it? Well, Al-Idrisi didn't just sit around and dream up this map. He traveled all over the Mediterranean, collecting first-hand information about places from people who lived there. He even went to China and consulted with Muslim geographers there to get information about Asia. And all of that information was compiled in this massive book called the Book of Roger, which came with this awesomely detailed map. The Tabula Georgiana was incredibly accurate for its time. The placement of cities and geographical features was mostly correct, and the overall shape of the world it depicted was also accurate. This was a remarkable achievement, considering that Al-Idrisi didn't have any aeroplanes or satellites to help him, and it's a testament to the power of human curiosity and exploration. But Al-Idrisi wasn't the only one charting the world. There were many other Muslim explorers and geographers who made significant contributions to our understanding of the world. For example, the great traveler Ibn Battuta, a Moroccan explorer and scholar, traveled over 75,000 miles during his lifetime, visiting over 40,000 cities. That's like walking around the earth almost 3 times. He documented everything he saw in his travelogue, the Rilla, which is a valuable resource for understanding the cultures and societies of the medieval world. He traveled to every Muslim state in the world and beyond, including sub-Saharan Africa, which at the time was virtually unknown to Europeans. He even made it to the court of the Great Khan in Mongolia. Along the way, he encountered all kinds of people, cultures, and customs, and he described them all in great detail. His writings are not just but a window into the world of medieval Islam. Another important contribution to navigation. Exploration was the development of the astrolabe. This device, which was used to determine latitude by measuring the position of stars, was invented in Greece, but it was the Muslims who really perfected it. They used the astrolabe for all kinds of purposes, including navigation, astronomy, and timekeeping. One of the most famous Muslim astronomers, Al-Biruni, used the astrolabe to measure the circumference of the Earth. He also made important contributions to our understanding of the solar system and the laws of gravity. All of these developments in geography, exploration, and cartography helped to link East and West and facilitate the exchange of ideas, goods, and people between the two regions. Cities along major trade routes, like Constantinople and Venice, became centers of trade and cultural exchange. And new technologies like the astrolabe and the magnetic compass made navigation easier and more accurate. As a result, the Islamic world became a crossroads of cultures and a hub of intellectual activity. In the next chapter, we'll see how this flourishing of trade and cultural exchange led to an amazing flowering of art and architecture. So stay tuned. If you want to learn more about the amazing accomplishments of the Islamic world, be sure to check out the series in the description below. Between the 6th and 7th centuries, Islam spread rapidly across North Africa and the Middle East. But what were the key characteristics of this new faith that made it so appealing? In this episode, we'll explore how the intellectual foundations of Islam contributed to its rapid spread. Welcome to the World This Week series, where we bring you the history of the entire world in 100 seconds. Every Friday. The year is 622. A man named Muhammad has just died in Mecca. His followers, who are called Muslims, believe he is the final prophet of God. They believe in one God called Allah, and that Muhammad is his final messenger. This distinguishes them from the polytheistic Arabs, who also lived in the area. But why do Muslims believe these things? What are the key features of their faith? And how did this new religion spread so quickly? Well, it helps to know that Islam was not just a new faith, but also a new way of thinking. From its very beginnings, Islam encouraged debate and discussion about its core teachings. Now, you might think of theologians as dry, boring people who just want everyone to agree with them. But back then, theologians were some of the most respected intellectuals around. People would travel for years just to sit at the feet of a great theologian and ask questions. So when Islam showed up on the scene with its claims about God, people took notice. One of the first major figures in Islamic thought was a man named Al-Ghazali. He was born around 1058 in the city of Córdoba. That's in modern-day Spain. Al-Ghazali was a Sufi mystic, which means he was especially interested in the experience of the divine. For mystics like Al-Ghazali, the most important thing was purifying the heart and being filled with love for God. Some even practiced meditation to achieve this state of divine love. Others, like Al-Ghazali, wrote books explaining their ideas to other Muslims. But Al-Ghazali wasn't the only one with something to say. There was also Ibn Taymiyyah, who was born in 1217 in the city of Haran. He was a theologian who believed that it was his duty to defend the traditional teachings of Islam from what he saw as new and dangerous ideas. Unlike the Sufis, Ibn Taymiyyah didn't emphasize personal experience. Instead, he focused on orthodoxy, right belief and practice. Both Sufis and theologians, like Ibn Taymiyyah, helped shape Islamic thought during this period, along with many others. But eventually, these various schools of thought split into four major groups: Sunni, Shia, Mu'tazila. These names can be hard to pronounce. But don't worry, because they're also hard to tell apart. All four groups shared the belief in one God and the prophethood of Muhammad. They all agreed on the basic tenets of Islam, such as the importance of prayer, charity, and pilgrimage to Mecca. However, they differed in their beliefs about free will, divine justice, and metaphysics, the study of God and the universe. For example, the Mu'tazila believed that humans had free will and were responsible for their own actions. The Ash'ari, on the other hand, believed that God has knowledge of everything, including the future. If God knows everything, then doesn't that mean there's no such thing as free will? Well, yes, if you're a certain kind of rationalist. But the Ash'ari didn't see this as a problem. They believed that even though God knew everything, he had chosen to give humans free will, so they could choose between good and evil. These debates were not merely academic exercises. They had real-world consequences. For example, the Mu'tazila were often criticized for their views on free will, which some people saw as a threat to social order. In the end, the Sunni and Shia groups prevailed. But the Mu'tazila had an important legacy. They helped develop new ways of thinking about theology, and their ideas would later influence other religions, such as Christianity and Judaism. By the 7th century, Islam had spread from the Arabian Peninsula to North Africa and the Middle East. Its diverse theological landscape had a lot to do with this rapid spread. Not only did it appeal to a wide range of people, but it also encouraged debate and discussion. While other religions might have been satisfied with a single interpretation of their texts, Muslims were constantly asking new questions and seeking deeper answers. And that's why, the last time we met, we started exploring the Golden Age of Islam, a period of cultural, economic, and scientific flourishing in Muslim history, spanning roughly from the 8th to the 14th century. We began our journey in Chapter 11, where we discussed how the rapid spread of Islam across diverse regions led to the formation of new Islamic states and the blending of cultural traits among Muslims. In Chapter 12, we saw how this era was marked by significant intellectual and artistic achievements, particularly in the fields of mathematics, astronomy, and architecture. Now, in Chapter 13, let's focus on another crucial aspect of this Golden Age: the role of trade and economy. You may recall from our previous discussions that one of the key features of Islamic civilization was the vast network of trade routes that connected distant regions. These routes facilitated not only the exchange of goods and ideas, but also the spread of Islamic teachings. Now, let us delve deeper into the economic aspects of this network and explore how they contributed to the prosperity of the Islamic world. Cities like Baghdad, Cairo, and Cordoba became bustling commercial hubs, attracting merchants, artisans, and scholars from across the known world. Baghdad, the capital of the Abbasid Caliphate, served as a crossroads between Europe, Asia, and Africa. Its strategic location along the Silk Road made it a vital stop for traders transporting goods such as silk, spices, and porcelain from China to the west. Cairo, located in the heart of the Egyptian trade network, flourished as a center for merchants traveling along the Indian Ocean routes. The city's proximity to the Mediterranean Sea and the Red Sea enabled it to participate in the lucrative trade of African and Asian goods. Cordoba, situated in Al-Andalus, benefited from its position at the western edge of the Islamic world. Its location provided a gateway for trade between Muslim merchants and those from Christian Europe, facilitating the exchange of goods and knowledge. These cities were not just centers of trade, but also of cultural exchange. The influx of merchants from different regions led to the establishment of vibrant communities, each contributing to the city's unique character and stimulating intellectual cross-pollination. For example, the Jewish, Christian, and Muslim communities in Cordoba worked together to translate ancient texts, fostering an atmosphere of scholarly inquiry that produced renowned polymaths like One of the factors contributing to the stability and growth of trade during the Islamic Golden Age was the emergence of Islamic finance. Unlike some contemporary financial practices in Europe, Islamic finance prohibited usury or the charging of interest on loans. This encouraged merchants to seek alternative ways to finance their ventures, leading to the development of partnerships and joint stock companies. Moreover, Islamic law provided a framework for ethical and fair business practices, including the establishment of weights and measures, the protection of consumers, and the prohibition of deception in trade. These measures fostered trust among merchants and facilitated the growth of long-distance trade networks. Another significant development that supported the expansion of trade during this period was the introduction of papermaking to the Islamic world. Originally invented in China, papermaking spread to Central Asia and then to the Middle East through merchant communities along the Silk Road. The lightweight and durable nature of paper made it ideal for record-keeping and literature. It quickly replaced the more expensive and cumbersome papyrus and parchment, facilitating the dissemination of knowledge and accounting practices. In fact, one of the earliest uses of paper in Islamic societies was for recording transactions, which helped merchants keep track of their accounts and inventories as they traveled along trade routes. Trade during the Islamic Golden Age was not limited to luxury goods. While silk, spices, and porcelain were highly valued commodities, the exchange of everyday items was equally important. Along the Indian Ocean routes, merchants transported textiles, glassware, and ceramics through the trans-Saharan caravan paths. Goods such as kola nuts, ivory, and gold moved across the desert. The availability of these goods in different regions contributed to the growth of local industries and provided consumers with a variety of products. In conclusion, the role of trade and economy was pivotal during the Islamic Golden Age. The strategic locations of cities like Baghdad, Cairo, and Cordoba, coupled with the growth of Islamic finance and the introduction of paper, created a conducive environment for the expansion of commerce. These factors, along with the efforts of Muslim merchants and scholars, contributed significantly to the prosperity and cultural vibrancy of the Islamic world during this era. As we've seen, the Islamic world was a melting pot of cultures and ideas, and trade played a crucial role in this fusion. The exchange of goods across vast distances not only brought wealth to cities and states, but also fostered intellectual cross-pollination and the spread of knowledge, From the bustling markets of Baghdad to the coastal trading hubs of Cairo, the economic activity during the Islamic Golden Age was a driving force behind the era's remarkable achievements. In our next chapter, we will continue our exploration of this fascinating period in history by discussing how the Islamic world engaged with other cultures through trade and diplomacy. Join me then as we delve into the interactions between Muslims and non-Muslims, and the impact of these encounters on both societies. Until then, keep exploring the wonders of the Islamic Golden Age and its lasting legacy on our world. The Islamic Golden Age is a testament to the power of ideas. In a world where civilizations often clash and compete, these centuries stand out as a remarkable example of intellectual cooperation. We've explored how Islamic thinkers built upon Greek philosophy, how they made groundbreaking discoveries in mathematics, astronomy, and medicine, and how they enriched our understanding of the world around us. But now it's time to look at the bigger picture. What was the lasting impact of the Islamic Golden Age? How did it shape the world we live in today? And what lessons can we learn from it? Chapter 15. Influence on the Renaissance and the modern world. In the 14th century, Europe was emerging from the shadows of the Middle Ages. It was a time of great change and upheaval, but amidst the turmoil, a new spirit was stirring. A thirst for knowledge and a desire to understand the world like never before. This period became known as the Renaissance, a rebirth of classical learning and human potential. And guess what? It wouldn't have been possible without the groundwork laid during the Islamic Golden Age. Meet Thomas Aquinas, a legendary scholar who synthesized Aristotelian philosophy with Christian theology, laying the groundwork for natural law theory and inspiring future thinkers like Dante Alighieri and William of Ockham. His work, Summa Theologica, stands as a monumental achievement, shaping medieval Catholic thought for centuries. He didn't work in a vacuum. No, sir. Thomas Aquinas built upon the ideas of Muslim scholars like Al-Farabi, who had already explored the depths of Aristotle's philosophy. Through his engagement with Averroes' commentary on Aristotle's ethics, Thomas Aquinas found inspiration and guidance, incorporating and adapting Muslim insights into his own theological framework. It's a beautiful example of how ideas transcend boundaries. Now let's talk about the one and only Leonardo da Vinci, the epitome of Renaissance genius. This man was a true polymath, excelling in art, science, engineering, and more. During the Islamic Golden Age, Muslim scientists made significant strides in optics and developed tools like the camera, which played a crucial role in the development of photography. Leonardo da Vinci, being the inquisitive mind that he was, built upon this knowledge, further exploring and refining the concept of perspective and its role in representing depth and reality in his artwork. He didn't just copy the masters. Oh no, he delved deeper, challenging conventions and pushing the boundaries of artistic expression. But it doesn't end there. The influence of the Islamic world on the Renaissance extended far beyond art and philosophy. Take, for example, the renowned astronomer Nicolaus Copernicus, the man who dared to challenge the prevailing geocentric view of the universe. He proposed the heliocentric theory, placing the Sun at the center of the solar system and shifting Earth and other planets into orbit around it. Now, Copernicus didn't come up with this idea in a vacuum. No, sir. He was influenced by the astronomical work of Muslim scholars such as al-Biruni and al-Khwarizmi, who had already made significant contributions to our understanding of the cosmos. By building on their knowledge and incorporating their ideas into his own theories, Copernicus was able to revolutionize our perception of the universe. The scientific method, this systematic approach to understanding the world through observation, experimentation, and logical reasoning, has been a cornerstone of scientific progress. Guess what? Its roots can be traced back to the Islamic Golden Age. Muslim scholars like Ibn al-Haytham, known as Al-Hazan in the West, emphasized the importance of empirical evidence and observation in scientific inquiry. They challenged long-held beliefs and encouraged critical thinking and experimentation. Their emphasis on reason and evidence laid the foundation for the scientific method, a method that would later be embraced and refined by European scientists during the Enlightenment and the Scientific Revolution. And let's not forget rationalism. This philosophical approach, championed by thinkers like Descartes, emphasizes the power of reason and logic as the primary sources of knowledge. But guess what? The seeds of rationalism were sown during the Islamic Golden Age. Muslim scholars like Al-Farabi and Ibn Sina explored the limits and possibilities of human reason. They delved into logic, rational theology, and the nature of knowledge itself. Their pursuit of rational inquiry laid the groundwork for the later development of rationalized thought in Europe. Secular inquiry, the spirit of asking questions about the world without relying solely on religious dogma, also finds its echoes in the Islamic Golden Age. Muslim scholars like Al-Ghazali engaged in critical discussions about religious beliefs and practices, encouraging a deeper understanding of faith through rational discourse. Their willingness to question and explore controversial topics paved the way for a more open-minded approach to religious studies, influencing the rise of secularism and the separation of church and state in later centuries. Epilogue: a civilization of light. The Islamic Golden Age wasn't just a blip on the radar of history. It was a golden era that illuminated the path for scientific progress, philosophical inquiry, and cultural exchange. From the architectural marvels of the Great Mosque of Cordoba to the vibrant trade routes connecting distant lands, the impact of this era resonates through the corridors of time. Science and faith don't have to be at odds. They can coexist, complement each other, and drive progress together. The Islamic Golden Age showed us the way. Think about it. Muslim scholars weren't just poring over ancient texts. They were making groundbreaking discoveries. They were like the X-Men of the scientific world, using their powers for good. They developed advanced weaponry, like cannons and crossbows. But they also made significant strides in medicine, optics, and astronomy. It's like they had a superpower that allowed them to see things others couldn't. The legacy of the Islamic Golden Age isn't confined to textbooks or museum displays. It's alive and thriving in our world today. The scientific methods we use, the numbers we rely on, and even the way we think about the universe, all bear the imprint of Muslim scholars who dared to dream and explore. So what can we learn from this extraordinary era? How can we apply the lessons of the past to the challenges of today? Well, for starters, embracing diversity isn't just a buzzword. It's a key to unlocking innovation. The Islamic Golden Age thrived due to the fusion of different cultures and ideas. Muslim scholars didn't shy away from learning from other civilizations. They were like the ultimate knowledge sponges, soaking up ideas from Greece, India, and China. This openness led to groundbreaking advancements that wouldn't have been possible in isolation. But it's not just about embracing diversity. It's also about valuing and respecting different perspectives. The Islamic world during its golden age was a melting pot of cultures, and this diversity wasn't just tolerated, it was celebrated. Muslim scholars from various backgrounds came together to share their knowledge and explore new ideas. They created a space where differences were seen as strengths rather than weaknesses. Moreover, the Islamic Golden Age reminds us that progress isn't always a straight line. It's more like a winding path filled with twists and turns. There were periods of decline and stagnation, followed by renewed bursts of creativity. Yet despite these fluctuations, the overall trajectory of progress continued. This teaches us that setbacks and challenges are just part of the journey. We need to pick ourselves up, learn from our mistakes, and keep moving forward. As we navigate the complexities of the modern world, the lessons from the Islamic Golden Age offer a beacon of hope and guidance, embracing diversity, respecting different perspectives, and persevering through challenges are essential for our collective progress. Let's take these lessons to heart and work towards creating a better future. A future where knowledge is celebrated, where differences are respected, and where progress knows no bounds. Just like during the Islamic Golden Age. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through history. If you've enjoyed this series, please don't hesitate to show your support. Your likes and comments mean the world to us. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button because we've got more exciting adventures waiting for you. Until then, stay curious, keep asking questions, and remember, the world is full of wonders just waiting to be discovered.